The moment I stepped into the bakery, the smell of cinnamon and fresh bread wrapped around me like a warm hug. It was early morning in Cedar Grove, and I had just returned from a long and emotionally draining trip. I was back in my small hometown, not because I wanted to be, but because life had left me no other choice. The city didn't work out, my job ended abruptly, and the apartment lease had run its course. I needed comfort. I needed familiarity. And strangely, I found it in something as simple as a pastry. My name is Amanda Fields, and I never thought I'd come back here after college. My plan was to conquer the world, write novels, fall in love, maybe in that order. But when reality hits, it hits like a truck. The bakery was owned by Mr. Denton, who had been making pastries for this town since before I was born. His son, Caleb, had taken over most of the responsibilities recently, and that's when everything began. I walked in and ordered my usual, cinnamon twists and a small latte. Caleb was behind the counter, just as I remembered him. Broad-shouldered, kind smile, a gentle way of speaking that made you feel seen. He recognized me instantly. We made small talk, and he asked if I'd be staying a while. I admitted, a little embarrassed, that I might be around for longer than planned. He offered me a part-time job helping with social media for the bakery, saying their online presence needed some help and he remembered I was good with writing. I said yes. Not because I was dying to post about muffins and croissants, but because I needed something to anchor me. Something to make me feel like I belonged again. The days at the bakery started to feel like therapy. I would write clever captions, take photos of the treats, and sometimes help customers. Caleb was patient, funny, and thoughtful. He would bring me extra pastries when he noticed I hadn't eaten, and once, when I looked especially tired, he handed me a coffee with my name written in elegant swirls across the cup. "Hang in there," he had scribbled underneath. My heart fluttered a little. One late afternoon, as we were closing up, he asked if I wanted to stay for dinner. He was trying out a new pasta recipe. I hesitated, but my stomach answered for me. Over dinner, we talked about childhood, dreams, and fears. There was something comfortable in his presence. He didn't push. He didn't pretend to have all the answers. But as weeks passed, I began to wonder if comfort was enough. It was a rainy Saturday when I first met Jason. I was at the town library, looking for old archives for a writing idea I had brewing. He was new in town, temporarily staying while researching a family history project. He asked if I needed help finding a certain newspaper record. He was charming, confident, and quick with jokes. We had coffee that same day. Jason was different from Caleb. Where Caleb was steady and warm, Jason was exciting and bold. He asked questions that no one ever did. He made me laugh in ways I didn't know I needed. In a few days, I found myself pulled between two versions of myself, one that felt safe in Caleb's world, and one that came alive with Jason. At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself I didn't have to choose, that I was just figuring things out. But feelings aren't patient. Caleb started noticing the distant looks, the missed texts, the sudden changes in schedule. He asked me one evening, gently, if everything was okay. I told him it was. I lied. Jason, on the other hand, never asked where I went in the evenings or who I spent my mornings with. He was here for a few weeks and made no promises. But every moment with him was electric. He would take me to late-night diners, talk about cities he had lived in, and make me feel like I was more than a girl who came back home with a suitcase full of disappointments. But soon, the thrill started to wear off. I began to feel empty when Jason left, unsure if I was chasing something or running from something else. One evening, after a beautiful dinner under the stars with him, I asked what would happen when his research was over. He smiled sadly and said, "I never make long-term plans." My heart sank. I walked home that night in silence, the wind sharp against my face. Caleb had sent a text, "I hope you're doing okay. No pressure. Just thinking of you." I stared at it for minutes. That simple message carried more weight than 1,000 exciting conversations with Jason. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, wondering why one amazing person didn't feel like enough. Why I kept needing more. More excitement, more reassurance, more of everything. And then I realized it wasn't about choosing between two men. It was about figuring out who I was when I wasn't trying to be what someone else needed. The next morning, I asked both of them to meet me separately. I told Jason first. I thanked him for reminding me what adventure felt like, for showing me pieces of myself I had forgotten. But I also told him I couldn't keep pretending I was okay with temporary. He didn't fight it. He smiled and said he understood. Maybe he did. Maybe he was waiting for it all along. Later, I sat down with Caleb at the park bench near the bakery. The same spot where we'd once eaten sandwiches during a lunch break. I told him everything. The confusion, the guilt, the longing. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he didn't say anything for a moment. Then he said, "I'd rather know the real you than pretend everything's perfect. If you want to try again, with honesty, then so do I." We started over. Not with grand gestures or love declarations, but with small truths and steady steps. The bakery became more than a job. It became our canvas. We added weekend story hours, baking classes, and a little corner called Amanda's Words, where I wrote about life, love, and rediscovery. Months passed. Jason sent a postcard once, from Chicago. It simply said, "I hope you're writing. You always had a story worth telling." I smiled. He was right. But it wasn't about one or two. It was about me, finally choosing myself. Sometimes, we think we need more because we're afraid to admit what we already have is worth the risk. I had looked for excitement and comfort in different places, but what I truly needed was the courage to be still and honest. Caleb and I are still figuring things out. Some days are easy, some aren't. But they're ours. And that's enough.